Hey everyone, congratulations, you've made it to the final paper. So far, over the course of this semester, you've been working with one topic. Hopefully you've enjoyed researching this topic, you've learned a lot about it as you've written your They Say paper and your I Say paper. It's time to finally take that topic and put it toward your final paper, which is the proposal. In this video, which is going to take a little bit of time because I've got a lot to cover, I'm going to talk about the proposal assignment itself, I'm going to talk about the outline and the snippet, which are coming up before the proposal and relate to that final paper, and I'm also going to give you a kind of breakdown of how you might structure this proposal paper to make sure that you get everything you need in there. So first off, we've already briefly looked at the assignment. Let's take another quick look at it now. Remember, if you go to assignments, it's the first one listed. So we'll open up the proposal assignment. This is due on the last day of class, which is May 30th. Normally our papers are due at noon. Yours is due at 5 p.m. Remember, after 5 p.m. you won't be able to turn it in, so make sure you get that thing in on time. Objectives, you can read over those yourself. Obviously, the point is that this is the final paper of the class. You're proving that you've learned something over the course of 102 and 101. It's your chance to show me what you've learned and to prove that you deserve a high grade in the class. Choosing a topic, you've already done that. If you have one of these forbidden topics, legalizing marijuana, the drinking age, and abortion, you better change it now. As of the They Say paper, a few people were writing about abortion. That's not going to fly for the proposal paper. Make sure that you pick something else. And make sure that it follows that problem-solution format. Don't think in terms of, oh, I want to write about obesity. That'll be a research paper. Don't think in terms of, oh, how can we fight obesity? That would be a argument paper or an opinion paper. Think in terms of obesity is a major problem in America. To solve this problem, I would suggest that we do X, Y, and Z. That's a proposal, problem, solution. So, for this paper, the details, and again, we're going to look in just a minute about how you might choose to lay this paper out. But remember, you need to define the problem and have a thesis statement that actually proposes a solution. Later, you'll go into detail about that solution. You'll provide evidence to support your thesis. You will anticipate objections, address naysayers, like it says in They Say, I Say, and you will attempt to score high in the different criteria that you can find in the rubric. Now, under course documents, you can see a copy of this rubric. If you scroll down, you'll see right here, and you can open it up, the rubric that I'm going to be using to grade this paper. So I would suggest that you take a little bit of time to read it and see what we mean when we're talking about quality of thought, clarity of purpose, organization of content. You're shooting to get a high score in each of these, so read the descriptions of what gets a high score in each category and try and achieve those goals. Try to steer away from the things that are going to get you a low score. Okay, so back to the actual proposal assignment. We talked a little bit about, let me finish this first, sorry about that. 5 to 7 pages in length. That sounds like a very long paper, and it is somewhat long, but as you'll see when I lay out the way that this paper is going to come together, the pages come quicker than you would think. So don't write 4.5 pages, but also don't write 8 pages. 5 to 7 pages is the amount that you want. Remember that the works cited page does not count toward your 5 to 7 pages. Document your sources and format your paper in general in MLA format. Remember to look at Purdue OWL if you need examples and details. And use your outline. I'm going to show you the outline in just a minute, but I've given you an outline that will help you break your paper down and include all the information that you need. We've gone over the source criteria, but remember, at least one scholarly source, at least 2 other sources from the library. The rest can come from wherever, but they need to be credible. Again, we've gone over the details of this, and you can read it to yourself whenever you want. I would suggest, by the way, that you take a look at this assignment as you're writing. Don't just try to write the paper off the top of your head. Look at the assignment, look at the example papers that I'll show you in just a minute, look at the outline, and that'll help you structure this thing better. Rough draft, Monday the 29th at noon. You're going to respond to your partner's papers that day to make sure that you have time to do a revision. Paper is due the next day, May 30th at 5. Now, let's talk a little bit about the structure that this paper is going to take. So I've made this little slideshow to help. We talked about, at its very most basic, the proposal is a problem and a solution. So I would think of your paper as kind of being 2 halves that hinge on your thesis statement, in which you shift from telling us about the problem to telling us what you're going to do about it. So first half of the paper, you're going to be explaining what the problem is, teaching us about the problem, saying why we need to deal with it. Second half of the paper, you're going to be telling us how to deal with it. So that's why it's so important to think in this problem solution format. First word of the day is holiday. Holiday. Now, a little bit more detailed way of thinking about it is to think about what you're actually trying to accomplish as you work your way through this paper. So basically, you have to do three things to convince your audience. First, you have to educate them. You have to make sure that they understand everything that they need to know about the topic in order to actually later understand your argument and your proposal. So the first part of the paper is going to be teaching them about the issue. Second thing is you need to convince them to be on your side. You need to make sure that they don't disagree with you about this problem. You need to make sure that they're on your side and they agree that the problem is real and needs to be solved right now. The third and final part is where you show them how you're going to solve it. You actually lay out the proposal. So to break it down a little more, this is what your paper might end up looking like. The introduction is where you educate them. You'll start with a grabber, which we'll talk more about in an upcoming lesson, but the basic idea of the grabber is it's a little anecdote, or it's some sort of interesting statistics or something you found in your research that is interesting enough that it gets the reader's attention and makes them want to keep reading. So once you've got them hooked, you can start to give them background information. So the background may come in several forms. You want to give them anything that they need to know to understand what comes later in the paper. So it might be history of the topic. So if you were writing about immigration or something, you don't need to go all the way back to when pilgrims were immigrating to America 400 years ago, but you probably do need to go back maybe 50 years or something to look at how immigration policies have changed over the last couple of generations. You'd especially want to bring us up to speed. How did Obama handle immigration, and how is Trump changing things? Those will allow us to see how we got to where we are today. Technical information means if there's anything we need to know about the way things work in order to understand your later proposal. If you're talking about immigration, we need to know specifics about the current laws, about what it takes to immigrate legally, how many people are actually here illegally, what is usually done to the people that are here illegally, and so on. Technical information so that we know what you're talking about when you bring it up later. The critical conversation is a part where you show us where different people stand on the issue. It's important that we understand what people are saying about this. Why are some people opposed to Trump's ideas for what we should do about immigration? Why are some people in favor of them? You don't have to go into great detail in your introduction, but we should get a basic feel for where people stand. If you think back to our early lesson where we talked about the dinner party, where you put in your or, remember you had to listen and hear what different people had to say about the issue before you could say your own piece. Same thing here. We want to know what different people have to say about this issue so that we understand where you stand. Then and only then you can give your thesis statement. Your thesis statement is probably going to be 2 sentences, and it's just a really succinct statement that tells you, your reader, basically what your paper is going to do. I would suggest 2 sentences, one that states the problem, one that states the solution. Immigration is a major problem in America because too many people are coming in illegally but are not able to have a reasonable path to citizenship. I propose we solve this problem by X, Y, and Z. Introduction will probably end up being 1 or 2 pages, something like that. Depends on how much background you have. But shoot for around 1 to 2 pages for the introduction, and it doesn't have to all be one big paragraph. You can break it into smaller paragraphs, and in fact, I would suggest you do. Once you've educated them with the introduction, you can move on to the argument. This is where you're convincing them. So you have to prove to them that the problem is real. If somebody doesn't think this is an issue, they're not going to think that you need to spend time or money trying to solve it. Prove to them that the problem is real and that it definitely needs to be solved, and it's something we cannot put off. It's something that we should solve right now. The second secret word is Cambodia, like the country. So you prove that the problem exists and prove that it needs to be solved. In doing so, you're going to use ethos, pathos, and logos to convince them. We haven't been learning about those 3 things for no reason. We've been learning them because we're going to use them. So use your credibility or the credibility of your sources, get the audience emotionally involved, and make a logical argument to show them that the problem is real and that it needs to be solved, and hopefully the way that you're going to propose. Make sure that you address any naysayers. If there's somebody out there who's going to try and shoot your argument down, anticipate their objection and you shoot them down before they get the chance to weaken you. Argument's probably going to end up being around 2 pages, so if you're keeping track, we're already up to 3 to 4 pages between the argument and the introduction, and remember we're shooting for 5 to 7 pages total. Last step, and probably the most important one given the title of the paper, is your proposal. So you want to lay out a very specific plan. Be as specific as you can in this thing, because the more specific you are, the more likely your audience is to buy into it. So this may mean doing it step by step. First we're going to do this, then we're going to do this, then we're going to do this. That's if you have a chronological sort of proposal that will have many steps. Other proposals don't necessarily have chronological steps, but more like branching steps, several things that need to be done. One group will work on this, another group will work on this, while a third group will work on this. However you need to break it down, make sure you lay out everything that needs to actually happen for this proposal to take place, whether it be step by step, part by part, or whatever. Second, you need to prove that your ideas are actually going to work. This is going to come in the form of support. Part of that will be through ethos, pathos, and logos. And another big part of that can be from if you find other proposals out there that are similar to yours that maybe have been used in another part of the country or another part of the world or another point in history. If you can find other proposals that are similar to yours, that's going to add a lot of credibility and suggest that your proposal will work as well. Just like with the argument part, you're going to want to address naysayers. Naysayers usually come in 2 forms. There's people who think your proposal is a bad idea and don't want to go along with it. There's also people who don't necessarily have a problem with your proposal, but they think their proposal is a better one. I would suggest addressing both of those type of naysayers. Now, how your proposal ends up panning out depends largely on how complicated it is. If you have a complex proposal, you'll probably spend most of the 2 to 3 pages that the proposal ends up being talking about how the proposal is actually going to happen. If you have a simpler proposal, you'll probably spend more time addressing naysayers, talking to people who might disagree with you. So spend your time based on where it's going to do the most to actually benefit your proposal. Now, one more thing about this paper. I like to think of research in terms of an iceberg. When you look at an iceberg, you can see that there's the tip, only a little bit sticking out, and most of the iceberg is below the water, stuff that you don't see. We all know this about icebergs. You should think of research for any project the same way. What you actually use in the paper is only going to be the very tip of the iceberg. What you need to know to really have a strong command of the subject such that you can write a compelling and convincing paper is the entire iceberg. So that's why you're spending 3 weeks researching this thing. If you know an iceberg's worth of material, it's going to be easy to include just the tip amount in order to write a good proposal paper. I know an iceberg's worth of stuff about English. So when it comes to just teaching 102 class, it's easy for me. It's just the tip of the iceberg. But I'm only able to do this well because I know all the rest of this stuff. I would suggest that you spend the time doing your research until you have an iceberg's worth of information. You could maybe fake it, just learning barely enough to write the paper, but it's not going to be high quality of thought. And if you look at your rubric, that's one of the criteria that you want to do really well in. So spend your time researching. Read a lot, reading stuff that you may not even end up using so that you're a master of the topic that you're talking about. Okay, so that's the basic structure that your proposal is going to follow. If you're looking for an example, I have one posted on Blackboard under Readings. So if you go to Readings and scroll down to Example Proposals, you'll see this college football proposal. Now, I actually wrote this proposal quite a few years ago, back when the BCS system was the way that they determined who was going to be the college national champion. I know that we no longer use that. They now actually do have a playoff. So I really ought to write a new proposal, but I haven't bothered to because this one, even though it's out of date, it still functions very well as an example proposal. So I would suggest that you read this paper and also look at the guide that I've written to the college football proposal. Because what I've done is I've broken it down paragraph by paragraph and explained what I'm doing in each paragraph. The paper begins with a grabber. These paragraphs discuss the history of the topic. Here the author discusses the critical conversation, and so on. You can read my paper, see how the proposal comes together, how I educate the audience, convince them, and then tell them how I'm going to solve the problem, and you can read the descriptions of exactly what I'm doing in this section right here. I have another example proposal that my wife wrote here. It's the sex education proposal. You can take a look at hers. It's structured slightly differently, but it still contains all the information that you need. So use these as guidelines. By the way, one quick thing, I have updated the works cited page on my example. So this is in 2016 format according to MLA documentation style. My wife's example proposal has not been updated yet, so make sure that you don't follow her example, her works cited page when you're trying to do MLA documentation. Look at this example here or go to the Purdue OWL. Everything else you look at should be up to date. Okay, so you've got your proposal assignment. You've got your example papers that you can look at. The next thing you need to know is what you're going to be working on as you work your way toward the final paper, and that's the outline and the snippet. Those are both due Thursday of week 3. So Thursday, May 25th at noon, you're going to turn in your outline and your snippet. You're going to turn them into safe assignment for me to grade, and you're also going to post them in the group discussion forum for workshop, just like you have your other papers. Now, the outline is an outline for this paper, and the point of an outline is to get your ideas together and organized so that you can then have something to work from when you're working on your final paper. So what I've done is I have provided you a template. Now, you don't have to follow this template. I would recommend that you do because it'll make sure that you get all the information in there and get it in a well-structured way. But if you choose not to follow the template and have your own design, make sure that you have a similar amount of detail included. Make sure that you give all the background information that you need, all the steps of the proposal, all the sources you're going to use, and so on. It should be just as detailed as the template. Now, if you're reading through this template and you're like, I'm not sure what he means here, well, I also have, under readings proposals, an example outline that matches up with my college football paper. So you can read the college football outline along with the college football paper and see how each one of these blanks that I've given you in the template is filled in and fits with what ended up being in the paper. And then you'll know what can go in your own blanks. So fill in the template for the outline or create your own outline and include a works cited page so that we can take a look and make sure that you're doing it correctly in 2016 MLA format. So the outline will be due on Thursday. Also due on Thursday will be the snippet. Essentially what the snippet is 1 page of your final paper. The third secret word of the day is temple. So 1 page of your paper, it can be any page as long as it's not part of the introduction. Introduction's too easy. We don't need to waste time reviewing your introduction. So bring in a part of your argument, a part of your proposal. You could even bring in part of your conclusion if you wanted. The key is that it's a page from your paper, 1 full page, that I can review and your classmates can review to see if you're on the right track. If your outline and your snippet are looking really good, then you know you're probably in good shape to work on the proposal over the weekend. If your outline and your snippet are looking bad, that is your wake-up call to get things fixed before the final paper is due in just a few days. Okay, I know that was a long lesson. I think that may be everything we need to cover, though. Let me take a look real quick just to make sure. Yes, I believe that's everything. So, proposal due on the last day of class, snippet and outline due on Thursday, rough draft of the proposal due the day before the final paper is due. Remember, problem solution, educate, convince, show them how you're going to solve the problem. If you can do all that, and if you've done enough research that you have your whole iceberg, I think you're going to come up with a really strong paper. Don't stress over the 5 to 7 pages. If you follow the structure that I've given you, I think that it'll come together really well. If you have any questions or any worries at all, don't hesitate to contact me by email, or we can talk by Skype or phone if you really need to. Best of luck. Get to work.